Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It is time again to update my media journal for the month of March. I was originally planning to combine both March and April in one video, but this video is already long, so April will be in a separate video. Hopefully that video will be out soon. But anyway, for the cover page for March, I wanted to do something similar to what I did back in February. So I'm using a yellow origami paper from the same set of papers I got from Daiso and pair it with this daisy packaging paper from Marshmallow Studio. I have ordered this packaging paper for a while, so I really need to use it up somehow. For the washi tape, I went with the Freckle Bear Sleeping Unicorn washi as well as the Spring Chubby Bee washi from Marshmallow Studio. My themes for March have always been very spring-like, and this cover page is no exception. As usual, I've printed out the posters for the shows I've watched using my Canon selfie, but I was having a bit of trouble this month because there were a couple of shows whose posters were landscape instead of the usual portrait. So I had to be a bit creative with the placement of the posters. I completed a total of 10 shows in March, and one of them is an SP or a special episode, so my review for that will be included in the review for the series later in April. I also briefly started the Impossible Heir, only to drop it a few days later because I quickly got bored after 3.5 episodes, which turned out to be a good decision because I heard the show went downhill afterwards. I only realized that I didn't leave a space at the top for the headers when I stemmed them out, so the headers for the ongoing and marathon sections are in between the posters instead. Hopefully that still makes sense, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit disappointed with how the cover page turned out. March was quite a mixed month for me. I had my first 9 out of 10 show for the year, but also my first 6.5 show in a very long time. The average rating actually came out to be 7.85 out of 10 because I changed a few ratings retroactively. This month I actually watched more Japanese dramas, which is a plus for me because eventually I want my completed list of shows to have an equal number of jdramas and kdramas. But now that the cover page is done, let's move on to the first kdrama I completed in March. This is also the first ongoing drama I completed in a month. Oh, but before that, I wanted to introduce my collection of fancy scissors that I'll be using throughout this video. I've mentioned them before in my August Plan With Me video, I think. They have been really handy for cutting different types of edges on my paper. Each pair cuts a unique edge, and they are fun to use when I get bored of just ripping the paper by hand. For this spread, I'm not entirely sure about the exact colors on the poster, but it looks like there are some orange and brown undertones. So I'm using an orange piece of origami paper and cutting it into quarters, then trimming one edge of each quarter using my scissors with a deckled edge. I'm pairing it with one of the papers from the same inkstrop set that I've been using in the previous months. This one has an orange and brown vibe that fits the poster, and I'm cutting it into quarters as well and trimming the edge with the scissors with a castle edge, or at least that's what it says in the item description, which seems to be in sync with the theme of the show since it is a sageuk, which is a Korean historical drama set in the Joseon dynasty. I'm layering the two papers in each corner to create a cohesive look. I made sure to cut the ink drop paper a little smaller than the origami paper so that both papers appear to be of equal width. The washi tape I'm using at the sides of the spread is an older washi tape which is probably from Shopee or AliExpress, but it is a polka dot washi with an orange background. So anyway, the show is called Captivating the King, and it is about Grand Prince Jinhan, played by Jo Dong-seok, whose brother is the reigning king. After an incident, Grand Prince Jinhan is taken hostage by the Qing dynasty, and his brother, the king, views this as a betrayal, causing a deep rift between the brothers. Jinhan then meets a baduk player and becomes captivated by this mysterious player. What he doesn't know is that the baduk player, played by Shin Se-kyung, is actually a woman disguised as a man. So back in the Joseon dynasty, women didn't really have the same freedom as men. So in sageuks, a woman disguising as a man is a popular trope, which I think maybe is a way to allow the story to progress without restricting female characters to the limitations of their historical roles, giving them more freedom to act and move through the narrative. And if you are unfamiliar with the game, Baduk, which is also known as Go, is a strategy board game, and the goal is to control more territory by occupying and surrounding areas on the board with your stones. So in order to win, you have to do some careful strategic planning. In the show, they draw parallels between playing Baduk and navigating the palace court, where the king, like like a baduk player, must know when and how to make his moves. So this is why baduk is referenced frequently throughout the show, especially since Grand Prince Jinhan eventually ascends to the throne and becomes the new king. But anyway, as king, he's now known as Iin, and his personality shifts, and the baduk player that he was smitten with somehow ends up entering the palace to seek revenge after something bad happened to her, but she's still disguised as a man, and King Iin still doesn't know her real identity. So you can expect some complications to arise in their relationship. I wasn't planning to watch this because I'm not usually drawn to very serious sakuks. I very much prefer watching a light-hearted fusion sakuk, but I felt that it had been a while since I last saw Jojong Sok in a non-hospital playlist drama, so I thought I should give this a try, but I kind of regretted my decision. I should have known that I would get bored because I was already feeling meh about it since episode 4. I didn't really care much about the palace politics, and I find the gender disguise trope to be a bit overused in many sakuks. Like, I understand why they need to do so given the gender restrictions at that time, but I feel that they could have come up with a better way for the female lead to enter the palace without disguising herself, maybe in the same way that Bloody Heart did. Shin Se-kyung's acting has not improved since I last saw her in 2015, and I think she might be one of the reasons why I got bored with this show. The other reason was that the plot moved quite slowly. Every episode felt longer than the previous one, which is typical for TVN to have episodes longer than the usual 1 hour. I was always behind on this every week, and I felt like it was a chore to catch up, so I ended up giving this only 7 out of 10, mainly because I appreciated seeing Jojong Sok in a more serious role. But for now, let's move on to a show that doesn't take itself seriously. This next show has some purple vibes going on in the poster, so I ripped a piece of purple construction paper for my decoration. But I wasn't too keen on how the ripped edges look, so I'm using my decal edge scissors again to trim the ripped edges. Can you tell that I've been so obsessed with this set of fancy scissors that I'm using them in every spread? For the borders, I'm using the Martians washi and the Winter Chubby Bee washi, both from Marshmallow Studios. I initially wrote the title using a yellow Archer and Olive acrylograph pen, but I was having a lot of trouble with this pen. The ink wasn't flowing very well. It was still okay when I wrote the word chicken, even though I had to go over the word a couple of times to make the ink look more saturated. But the word nugget was such a disaster. I hated how it looked. The ink looked very streaky. I'm not sure if it's just this yellow color pen that is having issues, but generally I'm not a big fan of the acrylograph. So if you know any brands with acrylic markers that do not require any shaking, please let me know in the comments. But for now, I'm writing the title on a piece of white printer paper with my Zig Clean color marker and cutting it with my wavy edge scissors. I tried to cut it with my normal scissors, following the shape of the letters, but I could never get them to look right. So again, if you have any tips, do let me know. I like how the word chicken looked, but I didn't like the look of the word nugget. So I rewrote it on the excess of the same printer paper, and I think it looks much better now. I'm trimming the edges with my wavy scissors again and pasting it over the old title. For 2024, I decided to leave the original writing as it is. Anyway, if you're wondering why I keep writing the words chicken and nugget, it's because that's the actual title of the show. And yes, I may or may not have watched this solely because of the title. To be more specific, the original title is dakgangjong, which is basically sweet, crispy Korean style fried chicken, but they decided to go with chicken nugget for the English title, which confused me for a while because I expected to see something more like chicken McNuggets from McDonald's. So this show stars Ryu Song-ryong, who seems to be the latest loving papa in K-drama land. He owns a machine company, and one day a mysterious machine is delivered to his office. He and his employee, played by An Se-hong, just assume that the machine is to relieve fatigue because they were supposed to receive that machine the following day. His daughter, Kim Yoo-jong, sees the machine and also thinks it's a fatigue relieving machine. She enters into the machine and gets turned into a piece of dakgangjong. So the dad and the employee, who has a crush on the daughter, are desperately trying to turn her back into human. I honestly thought that the premise sounded like that episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, where SpongeBob thought that he turned Squidward into an ice cream cone, and I actually liked that episode. I thought it was funny, but when that premise is made into a 10-episode Netflix series, I expected it to be more substantial. The show tried to be funny with such a ridiculous premise, but I got bored around the halfway point. It was quite clear that there was not enough plot to last the entire 10 episodes episodes, even though each episode was only 30 minutes long, which is also the only reason I stuck to the show till the end. To make things worse, there was also a backstory set in the Joseon dynasty, and there were some aliens involved as well. The show turned out to be very messy and nothing made sense. The ending did not resolve anything, if you can even call it an ending. I will gladly spoil the ending, so please mute this part onwards if you do not want to be spoiled. They jump to 50 years later and Chicken Daughter is still with the aliens, and at some point she says something like, I will still choose to be a chicken nugget, which is like ridiculous. So she's never turning back to human after everything, and Dad never got to reunite with his daughter even after so many years. Gosh, thinking about this show makes me angrier every time. I felt that this show was such a waste of talent for Ryu Song-ryong and Kim Yoo-jong. Like, we barely see Kim Yoo-jong here, so might as well cast a random extra and CGI their face as a Dak An-jong. There were a lot of random characters that pop by every episode, which is such a waste of everybody's talents as well. After watching Mask Girl, I cannot unsee An Jae-hyung as being a creep, and to be honest, his character is a bit of a creep here too, because why is he so infatuated with Kim Yoo-jong that he's willing to go to great lengths to help her just because he has a crush on her? I gave this 6.5 out of 10, but honestly it should have been even lower. I seem to have a streak of bad luck lately because the next show is not that great either. This next show's poster primarily features white and red colors, so I opted to use a piece of white origami paper along with a red one. I trimmed the edges of the white paper with a pair of scallop edge scissors, but for the red paper, I decided to cut it with a straight edge using a cutter. Because the origami paper isn't as long as the notebook pages, I layered two pieces of the white origami paper to make it look like one continuous sheet. Then I stuck the red strip in between the pieces. For the borders, I'm using a washi tape from the Asha and Olive collab with the Greater Good. I thought a grey washi tape would be more muted compared to the bright red paper. I'm also adding a shorter strip of checkered washi from the same collab to opposite corners of the spread. The deco stickers on this spread are from the Wednesday deco sheet from Simply Gilded, mainly because the stickers are dark, which fit the overall dark theme of the show, but also because this is a school theme show. I usually try to avoid shows that are set in high school because I don't really like school and I don't really like kids either, so I don't know why I even bothered watching this show. I think it's because it was on Viki, but this show is called Mars Zero no Kakumei, which I think means Zero's Revolution, and it's about a mysterious transfer student called Zero who gathers a group of outcasts for some vigilante thing. I honestly don't know what the purpose of their group is meant to be, but there is a reason why he chose these students specifically, and together they try to bring down this dodgy corporation by exposing their misdeeds. I'm honestly quite confused with this show. The students are gathered together quite quickly that I don't understand the dynamics of the Mars group, and honestly out of the entire group, only Zero and Itagaki Rihito stood out to me. The rest of them didn't have much personality or backstory for me to care about them, except for Yoshikawa Ai, and that's only because I knew her from her previous dramas. It felt as if there was an entire backstory that I missed out on, or if we were supposed to take the group as it is, because I don't really know what their purpose is. To make things more confusing, there were also talks of a previous iteration of Mars, with members completely different from the current members, with the exception of Zero, who was and still is the leader. I also find it quite laughable that a bunch of high school kids are trying to take down a large corporation. The corporation is similar to tech companies like Meta and Google, so imagine high schoolers versus these kind of big companies. So yeah, tell me, how is that believable? Or am I just a pessimist? I always love a good underdog story, but this one just required too much suspension of disbelief. Maybe because of that, I got bored with this show quickly. It was difficult trying to root for them, especially when their purpose wasn't clear in the first place, and their plans seemed too far-fetched for high schoolers to execute. It was honestly quite funny to see Yoshikawa Ai revert to a high school role after seeing her in An Incurable Case of Love and an adult version of her character in Junai Dissonance. And even though Michieda Shunsuke is the main character, I thought Itagaki Rihito stole the show for me. I enjoyed seeing his character more than Zero, and I hope to see him again in his next role, which is hopefully not a high school drama. Overall, I give the show 7 out of 10. It was just hard for me to take the plot plot seriously. And speaking of plots, the next show didn't even have one published. The main character of this next show is wearing a blue jacket in the show's posters, so I'm using this gingham pattern origami paper for the decoration this time. The washi tape is the blue chinoiserie simple bow line from Simply Gilded, and you'll see later that I'm using the stickers from the matching deco sheet. I found at least 3 posters for this show, so I'm including 2 of the posters on this spread, while the third poster is the one I used on the cover page for this month since it is in the portrait orientation. This show is called Anone, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and it's written by Sakamoto Yuji. Yeah, this was part of Netflix's recent release of Sakamoto Yuji's works, and at this rate I might end up watching everything he has written. When I was writing the names of the cast of this show, I was quite confused because I was expecting to write Kobayashi Kaoru and not Kobayashi Satomi, and then I see Abe Sadao's name and I got even more confused. But it turned out that I was mixing this show up with women. So that's what you get for watching too many Sakamoto Yuji dramas in such a short period of time. It also didn't help that Tanaka Yuko is in this show as well, so hopefully I didn't mix up the premise of this show with another show. So Anone is about a girl named Harika who seems to be somewhat of an outcast. She lives in a net cafe with 2 friends who are in a similar predicament. One day, one of her friends tells a story about a bag filled with money buried somewhere, prompting the 3 of them to search for it. But when they finally find the bag, they begin to fight over it. Through this bag of money, Harika encounters an old woman named Anone, played by Tanaka Yuko, though I'm not sure if that's actually her real name in the show. Along the way, they also meet Kobayashi Satomi, Abe Sadao, as well as Nagayama Eta. All of them will somehow end up being involved in a scheme. The synopsis of the show is pretty vague. There wasn't even a synopsis available when I first checked this out. This seems to be a specialty of Sakamoto Yuji. He knows how to draw me in without a proper synopsis. I wasn't expecting much from this show because slice of life dramas tend to go either way for me, so I was pleasantly surprised that I did enjoy the majority of this show. The plot, or the lack of it, was unique, especially when you realize what the show was actually about. In typical Sakamoto Yuji style, the show includes some social commentary. Like, it makes you wonder if there are people who live in net cafes like Harika, and the answer is yes. There is also a plot involving Kobayashi Satomi and Abe Sadao, which relates to self-exit, so that's something to be mindful of if it triggers you. I really love the found family trope in this show, which is also something Sakamoto Yuji seems to include in majority of his works. My main gripe with the show is that justice was not served properly. The mastermind, who deserved a more severe punishment, wasn't adequately punished, while others who should have received lighter sentences had heavier punishments instead. I also felt that the show went on for 1 episode longer than it should have. It would have been perfect if it only had 9 episodes. It felt a bit draggy with 10 episodes, though I enjoyed the show overall, so that's why I gave this 8 out of 10. I just wish the ending was a bit better. But the next show is almost perfection. I had a vision for this spread, and honestly this was my second attempt. I knew I wanted to have a large pyramid in the middle of the spread because this show is called Pyramid Game and there were a lot of pyramids referenced in the show. So I cut 2 right-angled triangles using a piece of black paper to form my pyramid. I'm also using a drip washi from the Archer and Olive and Greater Good collab. The aclerograph seemed to be working this time round, so I don't really know what the issue is. I think the quality is inconsistent across different colors, but this blue heather color is one of the few that I own which works well. The deco stickers that you will see later are from the Wednesday deco sheet again, because I guess you can consider the school they are in as an academy of some sorts, since the school seems to be one of the more prestigious schools, especially backed by a large conglomerate. And in case you're wondering, yes, this is yet another school drama. I was attracted to the show because of the title, and I thought one more school drama wouldn't hurt, and I was right. This was such a good show. It is about a new transfer student, Song Suji, who is enrolled in year 2 class 5, and the thing about this class is that it is the only one in the entire school with a classroom in a special wing. So other classes are in the normal school building except for this particular class. On her first day, Suji is like, okay, weird, but whatever, I will just lay low for now, and everyone in this class is so nice to her except for her seatmate. And then she finds out once a month this class plays a game called Pyramid Game, and the student who gets 0 votes will get an F grade and become the target of bullying. And Suji's like, yeah, surely at least one of the girls will vote for me, but she's wrong. She's the next target and now she's in the F grade. And the show is basically about her were trying to get out of the F grade and maybe try to abolish the game altogether. My only expectation for this show is to be slightly better than Night Has Come, which is another school drama involving the students playing a game, but Pyramid Game performed above and beyond. To be honest, it was quite hard for me to watch this without getting triggered, even though this show is essentially about school bullying, which I did not experience at that age. The setting of a prestigious girls' school hits too close to home. I can't help but imagine myself to be one of the students there, but apart from the subject matter, I really enjoyed this show. I always look forward to watching the next episode every week. Each episode was so thrilling, like you would always wonder if they would ever bring a stop to the game, or if the game will continue even as the bullying got more extreme. I feel like we haven't had a good female-driven drama in a while, and I'm really glad that this show showcased a strong girl support girls friendship group amidst all the horrible things that happen. I was quite surprised that majority of the actors were newbies or only had minor roles prior to this show, because they all acted so well in this show. Like, what do you mean this is jdramas' first acting role? There were a few parts that made me scream, like why none of them spoke out or told their parents about the bullying, but I also get why they might find it hard to speak out. It was also frustrating that in every episode there didn't seem to be a way for Suji to end the game. You can't help but feel helpless for the characters. I couldn't understand why the mastermind wields so much power to the point that the bullying has become a systemic issue in the school. The ending for the mastermind was also quite disappointing. I didn't think that they got the punishment they deserve. They should have gotten a much harsher punishment. But overall, this was such a good show. I would have given this a 10 out of 10 if I'm just rating it based on the vibes. But rating it objectively, considering its flaws, I ended up giving this 9 out of 10, which also made it my best show of the month. I think I'm finally on a streak of good luck because the next show is also good. The poster for this show is mostly teal with a brown background, so I'm using a teal gingham origami paper along with vintage looking scrapbook paper for the decoration, and I cut both papers into quarters. For the teal paper, I trimmed the edges using my wavy scissors. I think this might be my favorite scissors out of the set because it is the easiest to use. For the scrapbook paper, I'm using my scallop scissors to trim the edges, but I was struggling to get the cut right because depending on how you hold the scissors, the scallop edge might end up on the opposite side. So the side you're cutting on can have a sharp, uneven edge, which I don't like. So I end up trimming the scrapbook paper into a thinner strip, ensuring that I have the scallop edge instead. Once I have all my strips ready, I'm laying the smaller strip on top of the tail strip on all 4 corners. I hope that makes sense. I've been so obsessed with this style, but I don't really know how to describe it. I wanted to reposition the scrapbook paper a bit, but I ended up ripping it in the process, so I'm fixing it with an offcut of that tail paper and re-stick the scrapbook paper on top of it, and now it looks good as new. Then I just trimmed the excess paper using my normal scissors. I decided to take a chance on the silicone alphabet stamps this time round, and while it was stamped out properly, the ink didn't look saturated enough, so I'm just going over with my Zig Clean color marker. The stickers that you will see later are from the Christmas dinner deco sheet from Simply Gilded. I needed stickers that were more green to match the spread, but somehow the only green deco sticker sheet I have is the Christmas dinner sheet, so unfortunately this spread looks like a Christmas spread even though the show isn't Christmas themed at all. Flex X Corp is about a 3rd generation chaebol or conglomerate, Jin Isu. He somehow gets entangled in a case, and to cover up his involvement, the police decided to announce that he's actually a cop working for the police force. Even though that's a lie, but to keep up with the rules, Isu has to join one of the violent crimes team led by Lee Gang-hyun. So this show is basically about him working as a cop on the side and all the shenanigans he gets into. The washi tape I'm using at the sides is from an older washi tape set from Shopee, but I believe this is also on Journal Say. There is a quote from the show which I love, and I remember to note it down in my commonplace book, but I didn't measure the space I need for the entire quote before I started writing, so I ended up rewriting it on an offcut and sticking it on top of my mistake, and I think it doesn't look too bad. But of course I added more stickers to pretend like it was planned in the first place. I was always behind on this show. I remember I was going on a trip when the show premiered, and I forgot to download the episode on the Disney Plus app before leaving the house. Then I realized that Disney Plus and Disney Hotstar are not the same, so I didn't have access to Disney Plus anyway. Yeah, so that was the start of me being behind on this show every week. Then I was late for the finale too. I watched it a few days after it ended, which is such a pity because I absolutely really like this show. I felt like it has been a while since I last watched a light-hearted crime show. In fact, it has been a while since I last watched a crime show. So I was glad to finally have one in my current lineup of dramas. Crime has always been one of my favorite genres. So if there's a crime show out there, I would probably have it in my list one way or another. So it was a no-brainer for me to watch this. I was honestly worried that this show would be too similar to military prosecutor Doberman, which strangely also has An Bo-hyun as the titular character. He always plays this kind of fun, lively and relaxed character so well, but I'm glad that his character here is different from his character in military prosecutor Doberman. I love how clumsy Isu is. Like, he's acting so much like a real cop that he forgets he's only there for show. Though I'm kind of surprised that they didn't make him go through police academy to be a cop for real. So hopefully he will do so in season 2. Yes, this show already has a season 2 in the works, as mentioned in the final credits. SBS and their multi-season fixation never end. Though I'm okay with a second season for this show, it was fun, the cases were interesting as well. I really love the small crime team that we have and how they slowly grow to accept Isu as a member of their team. But my favorite character has got to be Kang Hyun's mother. She's so hilarious, like the way they could easily dupe her into going away for them to carry out the mission, and still, she doesn't suspect anything. Love her. Though the overarching storyline was a bit meh to me. I honestly can't remember who the culprit was, so that's why I ended up giving this 8.5 out of 10. And here's another crime drama where I can't remember the culprit either. There are 3 main colors on this poster, but I decided to base my spread on the middle color, which is blue. So I'm using this blue crane floral origami paper, which is from the same set as the paper on the cover page. The washi tape is the Spring Skies drip washi from Cookie Sticker Co. I initially wrote the title of this show directly on the origami paper, but I thought the word looked swallowed by the patterns on the paper, so I rewrote the title on a white printer paper, which is similar to what I did for the title in my chicken nugget spread. I was okay with writing the details of this show directly on the origami paper though. Since I wrote using a black fine liner, the words are still readable on the origami paper. The stickers I used for this spread are from the Witchy Vibes deco sheet from Simply Gilded. They don't really match the theme of the show, but I wanted something more cool tone to match the blue colors on the spread. I also ended up adding an older blue Galaxy washi tape from Shopee, I think, at the sides. Anyway, this show is called Malice, and honestly, I couldn't really find a lot of information on this show. I only knew about this show because of a Discord server that I'm in, and I thought it sounded interesting, so I went ahead and watched this. Basically, it is about 3 different people who get entangled up in a murder case. Hayashi Kento plays the detective who is investigating the murder of a university secretary general. A lecturer at the university, Tanimura Kaho, is arrested as the prime suspect. She apparently had been having an affair with the victim in hopes of getting promoted, and the murder seemed like an open and shut case. But a reporter, Maruyama Sota, received a tip-off about their affair and soon realizes the case is being manipulated. Meanwhile, Hayashi Kento, the detective, begins to feel that the case is a cover-up and that Kaho is being framed. From the poster, I knew that the show would focus on these 3 characters, but I wasn't expecting the show to alternate the point of view of the characters between episodes. It kinda reminded me of a show I watched last year, One Day, It's Wonderful Christmas Ado, where they cycle through the perspectives of each character throughout the series. I thought it was a fun way of storytelling, and it was done quite nicely in Malice as well. It was quite funny to see Hayashi Kento in a serious cop role, because the last time I saw him in a lead role, he was a bumbling cop in Hatsukoi no Akuma. Takanashi Rin was okay as Tanimura Kaho, but I felt frustrated seeing Tanimura not defending herself even though she knows she's being framed, which makes you think if she's really being framed or if it's just a way for her to get out of jail after committing the murder. I find the reporter role to be a bit irrelevant. I felt that they included the character just so that they could have 3 perspectives, but his character was the most forgettable to me. Even though I did enjoy this show, I also find that it wasn't that memorable, especially when I'm retroactively journaling about this show 6 months later. That's why I ended up including the Studious Jasper sticker at the top of the page, because I didn't have much to write about this show and wanted to cover some of the white space, which is also a reflection of how well the show is. It was a decent show, but I think it didn't bring anything new to the crime genre. Even though it was only 8 episodes, each running about 30 to 40 minutes. I felt like it didn't have enough plot to last the entire runtime. That's why I ended up giving this 8 out of 10. It was okay but not the greatest. But for now, let's move on to something I didn't expect to like as much. This show's poster is mostly white, but since my notebook paper is also white, I decided to go with this red floral origami paper since the words are in red, and I'm pairing it with an off-white origami paper to make the red less glaring. The poster for this show is quite weirdly sized, so it didn't fit my 2x3 inches template. So I ended up cutting off the extra white border on the top and bottom of the poster. I'm simply writing the title using my Zig clean color marker and Pentel Signal brush pen, but I mistakenly thought this was released in the 2020s. So I covered up my mistake with an offcut of the white origami paper. I'm using the color Love with pink foil bows for the washi tape. For the details of the show, I decided to cut a few short strips from the white origami paper for each header since the red floral paper is kinda looking busy, though the names are still visible when I write with my gel pen. The stickers that I use in this spread are from the pink books and cats deco sheet from Simply Gilded, not because there are cats in this show, but because this is a legal drama, which means there are a lot of books involved, right? I can't even remember when my last legal drama was. Gosh, it has been so long. If you didn't know, besides crime dramas, I also enjoy legal dramas. When watching Japanese legal dramas, I feel it's important to note that in Japan, there is a 99.9% conviction rate. So if someone is indicted for a charge, they are almost guaranteed to be found guilty. So this is a common trope in Japanese legal dramas, where defense lawyers are fighting for that 0.1% chance. And that is the plot of the show, where Sakaguchi Kentaro plays a lawyer, Kurokawa Taku, who is known for fighting for his clients' innocence and securing acquittals for them. And his clients are usually those that are actually innocent but lack the evidence to prove it, not people who actually commit the crime and are trying to get away with it. Kurokawa is now being paired up with this rookie lawyer Wakura, played by Kawaguchi Haruna. I think Wakura wanted to join another team in the law firm but ended up being assigned to the criminal defense team, and she's not really happy about it. She has some prejudice against the accused. This show mostly follows the case of the week format, so there were a wide variety of legal cases featured on the show, which is something I enjoyed. But what I found more interesting was that apart from the usual legal stuff, this show also incorporated some science to refute the prosecution's evidence. So this show felt like a cross between 99.9 Criminal Lawyer and Galileo. I didn't expect Fujiki Naohito to be here as the scientist who helps Kurokawa with the experiments, so his addition to the cast was definitely a treat for me. I thought the science aspect made this show stand apart from other legal J-dramas, since most of them always fixate on that 99.9% conviction rate. Most legal dramas seem to be the same to me. I also like that the science was not purely forensic related, because I think I'm over that trope in legal or crime dramas. Also, finally Sakaguchi Kentaro is in something I like. I didn't really enjoy watching Code Japan and Kyoso no Banin, so hopefully he will pick better projects in future. Kawaguchi Haruna's character is the usual uptight partner here, but I like that her character has some growth throughout the series. But my favorite character has got to be Shuri. She is such a great wing woman. It was also funny to see Akaso Eiji in a small supporting role. I wanted to see more of him, but overall I really enjoyed watching this show. Maybe because I was binge watching this show, so I did get tired of the formulaic episodes. So I gave this 8.5 out of 10. Perhaps if I watch it weekly, I would have rated it higher, though I can't say the same for this next show. This show is called When Spring Comes, so of course I had to incorporate florals in this spread. The poster is mostly grey or off-white depending on your computer or printer settings. So I'm using this floral origami paper with a white background for the main decoration, and I'm stamping the title using my alphabet stamps on the origami paper. Thankfully the ink looks good this time round. I'm really going for a spring theme for this spread, so this spread kinda looks more cheery despite the show's main topic. The washi tape I'm using is the Rainbow Meadow Simple Bowline washi from Simply Gilded, and while most of the stickers are spring themed, I also use a Lion King sticker since this show is about a dad and child relationship. Dad Masahiko and daughter Hitomi have always relied on each other since the death of her mother, but one day each of them has news to share with the other. Daughter Hitomi reveals that she's getting married in 3 months, while Dad reveals that he has only 3 months to live. Dad doesn't approve of his daughter's marriage, while daughter tries to persuade Dad to seek treatment. So they decided to write down things they want to do before her wedding and his funeral. I wasn't planning to watch this show because it already sounds so depressing, but it was Gem's pick for the season, so I felt like I had to watch it. Speaking of Gem, unfortunately the channel ceased transmission. I don't even know how many Japanese language channels have ceased in recent years. I think it's because they're not as popular as Korean language channels, but it's such a pity because it means one less legal avenue to watch J-dramas. But hopefully, with news of Netflix partnering with some of the broadcasting channels, the situation will improve in the future. But back to this show, yeah, I usually avoid shows with sad endings like this. Like, there's no way dad will survive this, right? Or maybe there's still some hope. I enjoyed seeing the father and daughter relationship. It was so wholesome. Though I can't say the same for daughter's relationship with her fiance because that was boring. I get that his character is supposed to be an unfunny, unsuccessful comedian, but I felt secondhand embarrassment listening to his jokes. I'm not sure if it was lost in translation or if it was really not funny, but it was hard to watch. I did enjoy the birth stories they introduced, since Hitomi works at a birth care center. Her friend, I believe, works at a funeral parlor, so they could have included a heartwarming story in the case of the wig style involving the person whose funeral he's handling, but they did not do so. It was a wasted opportunity. I also didn't get why they decided to give that friend unrequited feelings for Hitomi while making their other friend have feelings for him. It just seemed very unnecessary. The plot also felt draggy after the show was extended to 11 episodes. It would have been better if it only had 9 episodes. I actually felt bad for getting bored while watching this show, but I can't change how I feel. I think it's just not a topic that I'm drawn to in my dramas. Slice of life dramas always go either way for me. Either I enjoy it or I get bored by it. Unfortunately, this show leans towards the boring part for me, so I ended up giving this only 7.5 out of 10. Before the final flip through, let's update my In Love and Deep Water spread from February, since my Sailor Jasper deco sheet from Simply Gilded has arrived after so long. For some reason, I thought the stickers were much bigger than they actually are, so I ended up adding more stickers to fill in the space. And now, time for the final flip through. I think my spreads for March look so much better than February, so hopefully I will keep this up for future months. March was a shorter month for me, and April will be even shorter. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got some inspiration for your own media journals. Let me know in the comments the shows you're currently watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!